I think it's a bit of sort of stereotypical to get an American on a channel and speak about Pulisic, but it's interesting. The last time we spoke a year ago, Pulisic had just arrived at Chelsea and he hadn't even scored a goal yet for Chelsea. And I remember asking you about, Pulisic, how important he was to American football and sort of the hopes of Pulisic coming to a massive English club and succeeding. I mean, 1920, although he did have some early struggles and injury problems, I mean, by the end of, I thought he could be that good. I couldn't quite believe how good he was by the end of last season. I mean, just from sort of a local aspect, as an American fan watching Chelsea, what was it like for Pulisic? Because I'm sure as he got better and better for Chelsea, I'm sure the sort of the media were over it in America because it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to think about how much more it would be obvious to me and Americans if it weren't for COVID, because then we would see a little bit more, like we'd be going out to pubs and we'd be just living life how we used to be. We'd see people on the streets more often, and I'd really get a gauge of like, oh wow, there's Pulisic kits that I normally wouldn't see. So I think I will see that in due time. But COVID obviously has changed a bit of how I would fully see the impact he's made. But yeah, I mean, Christian Pulisic, I would say even when he was like 16 or 17, and he was out in Germany, and he was no more than players we've had like a Freddie Adu, who might mean nothing to this channel or many people listening, but he was like way back in the 90s, I want to say, this young wonderkind who was supposed to be the next big thing. And for us, that's how we market all athletes here in the US, but especially for, I have to call it soccer in this instance, like it was really an unpopular sport in the 90s compared to our sports here. And once Freddie Adu kind of failed and he didn't turn out to be anything, it just added on to this reputation we have in the country of, we're just not any good at this sport. We're just really not meant to be good at this sport. We can be good at the other ones. But it just felt like we were almost starting to become our own joke. We were making fun of ourselves. We have been for a while with our U.S. men's national team. However, right when Pulisic made that move to Germany, I do think some people were like, let's see. Like, because even the most fair weather fan knew Bundesliga for a 16-year-old American. Wow, that's not bad. And then you had like people like LeBron, right, start tweeting after maybe Pulisic would have a good game, or just U.S. athletes with a huge public profile taking notice, who were at least a little bit into the sport, taking notice of Pulisic. And yeah, he never fully hit the ground running at Dortmund because of little injuries here and there, but he always had moments. He always had enough to maybe keep you interested. Me personally, I've been outspoken. I was always a fan of him, but I was so cynical about how the United States was at this sport that I thought to myself, we must be overrating him. We must be overrating him just because we are just such a joke right now. All he has to be is good, not even great or promising. And we're just going to view that as a huge step up from what we have had. But yeah, Daniel, I mean, I would say that right when Frank started playing him, yeah, I know he didn't start playing him right away, but beginning of last season, when we saw Pulisic play a bit more, the hat trick, of course, like I did start to think, ooh, wow, okay, all right, like this is not going to be a bust or a flop. And his mentality was always something I was really impressed by. So I knew that, Frank, it was giving him a bit of a hard time, some people on Twitter would say, with playing time in the beginning. I think at the end of the day, he was just kind of protecting him, easing him in. But also, he was trying to do what he's trying to do with Callum right now. He also was trying to make Pulisic grab it, like really grab it by the horns and prove to him, hey, I should have you in my starting 11 every time out. And my God, I mean, similar to what you were saying with Conte, we could never fully see Pulisic in our side for much of the season. People now forget because of that abductor injury that kind of kept being annoying. It kept feeling like each press conference we had with Frank, he would finally say Pulisic's in the squad, and it was just drawn out and drawn out and drawn out. And then finally Frank said, like, I feel bad for him. I had the same injury too once upon a time, and they just kind of linger. But maybe the pandemic helped him because it did allow him to get some extra time for recovery. And Daniel, what we saw out of that restart was scary good. Like that was, yeah, as an American, it was pretty cool for me to realize, holy crap, someone from this country, and truly from this country too, like Hershey, Pennsylvania. Like it doesn't get any more. I know his grandfather, everything Croatian and stuff. And when he was young, he had a couple moments in the UK, but really like truly American, Hershey, Pennsylvania. And what we saw out of that restart. It wasn't just the play, it wasn't just the dribbling, it wasn't just the confidence he had, but it was like the demeanor and the aura he was giving off on the pitch. It was like, I'm a legit freaking player. Give me the ball. It was almost like an NBA comparison. Like, give me the ball. I'm going to go do something with it. Like, and the way he turned was so direct. And yeah, I mean, there were plenty of people who were already fully on board with the Pulisic train then. And I was certainly getting there after what I had saw at the beginning of the season. But I think if you watch that, Daniel, if you watch Pulisic out of the restart, whether you're American or not, and you're not a believer now, when he's at least fit and on the pitch, I just don't think you're watching closely enough, because I know it was a smaller amount of time, but that was one of the most convincing periods of play from a player I've seen in a while. So yeah, for an American, I think that caught a lot of people's attention. You got to remember, no one was doing anything during that time. Everybody was in the house. So I can't exactly give you the a report over here in America once again because of COVID, but I guarantee you, yeah, that probably made him that much more in people's minds. And I think once we do get back to normal, whatever that new normal is, I guarantee you, Daniel, will go to a pub soon after and be for a Chelsea game. And I'll be surprised by the amount of people who have caught on to not just Christian Pulisic, but Chelsea. Like, Christian Pulisic can make Chelsea America's team.
Yeah, I was stunned with how good he was, but I think, he had that, for me, very much defining week in the autumn last season where, what was it? He came on against Newcastle, and although he didn't get the assist, I think he very much changed the game then and almost helped to set up the pass before the pass. And then he came on against Ajax, set up the winner there, and then he got the Burnley hat-trick, which was just incredible. The most amazing thing to me about Pulisic is you can talk about the speed, the acceleration, the dribbling, the incredible story in terms of him from a young age having to play in sort of older age groups, those incredible videos where he's just so small on the pitch and being able to deal with physical teams. I mean, that's why when I wrote an article about Pulisic, about sort of Burnley, and it was such a sort of you could look back at the early days of him playing football, having to play against more physical players, and then look at him against Burnley excelling as well. And sort of seeing that comparison, and he's been doing this almost all his life, dealing with having to play against older and more physical players and really excelling. For me, it's his anticipation for goals is just incredible. I think he's got almost a Diego Costa sort of striker level instinct to be in the right place at the right time, and that's weird because that's limiting his game. But for me, I just think when you make comparisons to Eden, I think he can score many more goals than Hazard did. And that doesn't mean he's going to be a better player than Eden Hazard, because Eden Hazard was an incredible player for Chelsea, don't get me wrong. But I just think Pulisic could be that winger that could get over 20 goals. I don't know if you agree, because I think in terms of being in the right place at the right time when a cross goes into the box that you saw so many times last season, or just his motivation and hunger to get on the score sheet, I think he's just so difficult to stop, and I think he'll get a lot of goals.
Yeah, I totally don't disagree. And that is going to be a big kind of U-turn or 180 from when he hadn't yet played for Chelsea. And I was thinking about how many goals he would score, because let's be real, in Germany, that was something you could at least raise a question about. Like, will he be a goal scorer? But my God, how can you watch, especially what he did out of the restart, and not think that, yeah, he'll score goals, but also he clearly wants to score goals. Like, he's telling you that through his play. So I think everything you said there was spot on. He just looks to do it more than Eden. Like, that's just clearly when he's on the pitch, it's just a bit more of a priority from him. And it probably should be, because let's be real, what Eden does best, I mean, really nobody does better than Eden Hazard. I mean, obviously, Messi is just so clear. But there are certain things that when Eden is Eden, that just nobody does better than him. So there was two moments, and I'm never going to be able to tell you the opponents because my brain doesn't work like that. But they were both in the restart. And well, actually, one of them was in, unfortunately, the FA Cup final when we lost to Arsenal. The goal he scored was just, of course, him being hungry to get in the middle of the box and finish something off, and always wanting, of course, to have the ball around Giroud or somebody like that. See, Eden would use Giroud higher up the pitch to kind of make beautiful plays and to get the play started and to create some type of a great chance. But he would use Giroud as a target man out of the 18. Pulisic's probably looking to use someone like Giroud a little bit more in the 18. Hey, just literally touch that ball so I can put it in. So Pulisic, you can tell he's thinking of all unique ways to score. So much so, my second example is maybe his first goal out of the restart. We were not doing well that game.
Aston Villa, I think it was. He came off the bench and equalised.
far post. It was like a header or a tap in or something like that, far post. And he kind of came out of nowhere. I think we were wearing the black jerseys in that game. Yeah. So it was just like, wow, there's another random way Pulisic's looking to score. And if you look back at his 9 Premier League goals last season, scored in a variety of ways, like a variety of ways. He one time, of course, the hat trick, we all think it was a perfect hat trick, left, right, head. Absolutely. But then in that really nice run of form, he scored kind of just like a poaching goal, as you would with a striker just running to net. Someone crossed it in towards the middle of the goal. I mean, you saw from him, really, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but like he was looking for all ways to score. He was showing a hunger to score. And the only thing that will stop him, Daniel, from getting at least a couple seasons, at least one season of 20 goals is fitness. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I think once he's back, and hopefully maybe we'll see him start on Saturday, or definitely I think he'll be starting the Sevilla game. I think you're going to see a different team that we've seen in the opening weeks of the season, because he's so difficult to defend against. He wants those goals. He wants to score. He wants to create chances. I think that he will be the star for me of this season if he gets a good run of fitness, because I think you saw it last season. He became so integral, and with the new players to combine with as well, it's just so exciting to think about. No, I haven't got long because you've got a dash, but last thing I want to sort of ask you about is sort of the future of Chelsea. I mean, it's a massive question, but I feel that something we talk about a lot is sort of bringing in Frank Lampard and bringing in young players and sort of seeing that opportunity for youngsters, but also combining that with some amazing signings as well. Do you think that Chelsea need to have sort of this realistic route now going forward in an actual path from Cobham to the first team, the academy to the first team? Because Lampard has shattered a glass ceiling, and all right, we've signed a lot of big players this season. But for me, I really think this should be the standard now. 1 or 2 players, just constant opportunities for youngsters, because I think it does the team and the club so much good. But it also saves us a lot of money in transfer fees as well. I mean, you think about the amount of money Chelsea have saved with Mason Mount, Reece James, Fikayo Tomori potentially, Tammy Abraham too, and Callum Hudson-Odoi. Do you think that that's something that you want to see in the coming years, even if Lampard leaves, sort of the next coach as well?
No question. No question, because I don't even care. I mean, I do care, but I don't really care what happens this season based on results, because we can already say whatever happens with the players that Chelsea got in the transfer window, you can already say that transfer window isolated was a massive success. Anybody would say that, because the prices you get those players for, if you were to get someone really analytical, right, and was just all about telling you scientifically how good something was, they would tell you that just forget the results and what happens after. That transfer window from Chelsea, besides not being able to sell some players, was a historic success. What allowed them to do that, besides having the ban and selling Azar and Morata, what allowed them to do that was the fact that they now have a bunch of first-team players that they don't pay an amortization on. So you just said it. These young guys in the squad, sure, weekly salaries, but there's no annual fee that they pay from their actual transfer. There was no transfer, no amortization. I've talked about that a lot. So it's always cheaper to have your own players that you have, once again, no amortization for. Now, they have to be worth it, Daniel. Obviously, you can't just be including these guys to save money if they're just a waste of space. That wouldn't be helpful at all. But it comes back to when there was a convo mid-season about Tammy and if he was actually demanding what he was demanding weekly wages-wise. I don't want to get into that. But my whole argument there was, if you even rate Tammy as a backup, then it's smart to have him in the squad, because that is way cheaper than having Michi, who is, forget whether you rate Michi or not, but you're paying Michi, fine, decent weekly wage too. Maybe Tammy's would be more. However, Michi, you're paying this additionally because he was a transfer for you. So if you believe in these players at all to be at least even squad players, it's smart to have them in there. So yeah, whether Frank is here or not, I hope they never stray away from that, because I'm sure Marina and there's some smart people there at the club who realize what having these players already in the squad has allowed them to do. Now, I still think a lot of this was the transfer ban and the Azar money and the Morata money. But over time, Daniel, yes, having these players be important parts of your squad, just having them in the squad, once again, they could be bench players, that's going to do so much on the books. So it's a business strategy that is really smart and logical. It's actually why I was so freaking frustrated for so many years. I mean, I can't claim that was my number one reason why I wanted these players to play. I wasn't saying, so you can save money. No, it was a little further down the list. I wanted them to play because I believe in them, and I think they're really good players. But there are so many benefits to it. John Terry has talked about it, like people within the game who know how good Chelsea's academy is, who also know the benefits of having those players. They've spoken about all the benefits to having these guys in. So I hope it never stops as long as, once again, these talents are worth it. But I don't have, especially with Frank in charge, Daniel, I don't have much fear that it will stop, because Frank has talked about how he always wants to have, especially if COVID's not there. COVID's made it a bit harder right now to have the academy, the U23 team, et cetera, be with the first team. But, Frank's going to try that at every opportunity to get deserving youngsters at least training with the first team. And then he's more in their vision, and he can see, hey, should this guy at least be included tomorrow for the FA Cup squad? Could this guy make the Champions League squad because we have a player suspended or injured? And you start to get that integration. You start to have somebody like Billy Gilmore last season not go on loan because Frank's thinking a little bit ahead and thinking, hey, we get an injury or a suspension, I might need Gilmore. And look, Frank forecasted that beautifully last season. So I love that bridge there is so apparent now that Frank's made it. But I even think in general, just Chelsea-wise, they should be able to see already, even cynics who think this project's not going well should be able to see the benefits of it. So, Daniel, in my opinion, I don't think the talent's going to stop at Cobham anytime soon. I am not as up-to-date on these groups now as I was when all of our guys were in the below groups, but I know there's some really nice talents coming through right now, U16, U17. But of course, you have players like Tino Andrin and some other players that you already know of. So it's not stopping. It's really not stopping. And I think the bridge will forever be there. They're still going to go for the Kais and the Timos and everything. And you have to do that being Chelsea, and you should do that. But I think the bridge is always going to be there because, once again, having these players helps you get the Kais and the Timos.
Absolutely, 100%. Final question is a difficult one. If Chelsea can only win one trophy with Frank Lampard, what trophy would you want that to be?
Well, he would be the first English manager to ever win the Premier League with Chelsea. With any Premier League team. So that still hasn't been done. So that would be beautiful. But I still think I have to say the Champions League. I know he's won it as a player. We've won it. So it's not, if we hadn't won it, obviously that's the answer. You don't even have to ask that question because you just have to check that box. But yeah, the Champions League. But listen, it's a much tougher question than maybe it normally would be, because you have to compliment a Liverpool and a City that they make the thought of winning the Premier League now really freaking, it's always special. But they've been so clearly the best two teams now for a few years. And really, if you consider City for even longer than that, that it almost seems like, right now at this moment, it would still be too good to be true. We're headed there, and we're going to be contenders for it for a while. But still at this moment, it seems like too good to be true. If you were to say, hey, Alex, I've seen the future and we win it this season, I'd be like, what? This is going to be the greatest season ever. I'm going to watch all these games 5 times. You know what I mean? So right now, Liverpool and City have made winning the Premier League all that much better, even though it was always a great thing. So it's a really hard question. So honestly, I'll go 51% Champions League, 49% Premier League, and maybe it normally wouldn't be that close.
I think the thing is with Lampard, even an FA Cup or a League Cup, I think would be more special than it would be with other coaches. I think just for fans, just seeing Lampard win any piece of silverware. I do agree with you, the conflict. Champions League, greatest night of my life, Munich 2012. It just was so special.
Yeah.
Don't think you can top it. But the Premier League now, with that competition, it is so intense. But thank you so much, Alex, for joining me for this conversation. Great to collab. Also, thank you for getting me on the Byline podcast. Guys, if you haven't listened to that podcast, please go back and listen to it. We spoke about a lot of interesting topics, even though it was, I think, pre-West Brom and Palace. We did talk about some wider topics that I think you'd like to listen to. But as I do with all my guests, Alex, want to give you the opportunity now to shout out where people can find your work online.
All right. Yeah, appreciate it. So you can follow me on Twitter at Alex Goldberg _. And then I pretty much keep it simple in terms of my content creating these days. It's all on the Byline on Patreon. So that's a podcast primarily. We are adding a couple things to the Byline on Patreon that you'll hear about soon. But it's a podcast of mainly me, who will interview people from all over the industry. I try and keep it Chelsea centric, but I'll definitely branch out. And then, yeah, I'll just be doing more post pods this season as well. So besides the interviews I do, which will never ever change, I don't care how busy Chelsea's schedule is. I always want to bring in interviews and Chelsea roundtables, of course, have that balance. But also, I'm going to do more post pods. I think for a while, if people have followed me, I would do YouTube videos. So now I can't be on 8 different platforms. So I'm just keeping it centric on the Byline on Patreon. But the same way I would do a YouTube post video, I'll now just be kind of doing a post pod. So yeah, follow me on Twitter, and then really you just get kind of all the news because I just have everything on that one channel. So yeah, man, it's been awesome to come on, and I just want to say, not to blow too much smoke up your rear end, but you do a great job on this channel. I really think you're fantastic for the community. I've always digged your setup, by the way. I know aesthetics don't mean a whole lot, but they matter a little bit. They do matter a little bit, at least to get people watching initially. So I like what you're doing, and you're really good for the community, Daniel. So thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for those kind words. And I definitely suggest check out the Byline podcast. It's an amazing pod. Not only some amazing guests, but also great Chelsea content creators on there as well. And all the links that Alex just talked about will be in the description box below. So please go and check them out, support Alex's work. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonofChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.